2 years ago, just before Easter 2021, I was driving my kids down the interstate and doing some research for the upcoming resurrection celebration. I spend hours and hours scouring through playlists and blogs and Google searches to create a playlist of several hundred songs for me to go through and pick what we're going to do for worship. I remember this one particular song came on and I instantly said in my mind, "This is trash. I hate this so much. It's like a mix of kids bop and techno worship." I was like, no way, no how. This is not ever going to be a good song for worship. That's when I looked in my rear view mirror and saw my son tapping his foot and kind of grooving. And then my daughter asked me, "Who is this?" Back in 2019, there was a Saturday service here at Calvary that I remember like it was just yesterday. If you are unfamiliar, we used to do Saturday blended services here. And what you need to know about blended worship is that it is just enough to make everyone unhappy. So it was the end of the service, we were doing our final song, and before I had even finished that song, I had a lady standing right in front of me just waiting for me to finish. So I said my "go in peace" and "God bless" and all that, and she jumped me. She said, "That was too loud and too fast and too rock and roll." And I did my best to love her in that moment and said I'd work on it for the next week as the next lady came up to me. And this is what she said to me. "I kid you not. That was boring and slow, and it seems like you don't care about this anymore." See, I really wasn't actually joking about the fact that blended means you get to make everyone mad. If you watched a previous message of mine about worship, I talked about how there has always been a tension between different styles of worship, no matter what church, no matter what location, no matter the denomination. And I already said that I honestly think it is crazy to shame someone for worshiping God, no matter how that looks. Feel free to watch that. But I wanted to change the angle and talk about the different types and why I think they are so valuable. Most flavors of church that have two or more worship styles call it something like traditional and contemporary. I personally hate the word contemporary and prefer to use the word modern. Modern for me can include the newest song that you hear on the radio and include all the old favorite hymns in maybe just a fresh, new, or modern way. But I like to go a step further and reframe it. I like to think of traditional as rooted and modern as relevant. I love those words because they aren't so baited. They're not loaded with years of arguing internally. I grew up very traditional in the Lutheran Church. I sang in the church choir and loved liturgy and have all the most familiar hymn numbers memorized in the hymnal. Amazing Grace is 779, How Great Thou Art is 856. I could go on forever. I think of these hymns and all the liturgy like roots of a beautiful flower or a mighty tree, or even an anchor for a ship. When times get rough, when the storms come, when the winds blow, for me that is a place I can retreat to and hold to that familiarity like a root in the ground or an anchor in the sea. It holds me fast to the promise of the truth that God is holding me tightly today and all the days to come. And then we get to the modern side, relevant. There is something fresh about new music. It seems to capture what God is up to in our lives at this very moment. It can feel at times like that song is talking to me directly. It more closely resembles the music that you hear on the radio, whether you listen to pop, rock, country, rap, or the Christian channels. Yes, there are a lot to wade through that I think are maybe not so great. But I guarantee that I've played through more hymns than 99% of the people out there, and I can assure you that there are just as many wonky hymns out there. It happens. I think it's fascinating to look up stories of our favorite hymns and when they were released and how they were received. So get this. Most hymns that we now call the standards or the favorites, those old-time religion hymns, at one point in life, they were also new. And guess what? The people of that day and age hated them too. Those hymns like Amazing Grace and How Great Thou Art were shunned as contemporary rock and roll, and there was no place in this church to sing junk like that. Funny how time changes things. But we are all always changing and moving and growing. There are several passages I found that make me think that there's nothing wrong with new. Let's start with Psalm 98. Sing to the Lord a new song, for he has done marvelous things. His right hand and his holy arm have worked salvation for him. And Revelation 14. And they sang a new song before the throne. Also Psalm 40. He put a new song in my mouth, a hymn of praise to our God. For me personally, I like to have both sides. It shows the beauty and the vastness of this God, this big, big God, this God, our Creator, who created everything in God's likeness, created us all. Just like some people like the sunrise and other people like the sunset, we can just realize that God is the creator of all of it and has created us all that way. I think it is also fine to have our own preferences. I don't get out of sorts that someone doesn't like tacos, even though tacos are the best food ever created. It's true. It just means more for me. When I think about that song that my kids and I heard and how I thought it was awful, and my kids were instantly drawn to it, the thing about new music is that it attracts new people, specifically the next generation, which begs the question, who are we handing the keys to the church to? Is it people our age? Or is it the next generation? And how important is the faith life of the next generation? Here at Calvary, we say it's worth everything. And to me, that means that as a worship minister here at Calvary, and as a parent, I have to set aside my opinions and my preferences so that I can invest in the faith life of the next generation. How wonderful is it to go to worship and see kids hanging from the rafters, to see your son or your neighbor kid or your granddaughter dancing and singing about the love for them by their Creator. And for my final point today, as a worship minister, I play organ and I direct the choir and I know how to play guitar and drums and everything else in between. My job here at Calvary and in life is to connect people to God through music. Why would I ever say we should get rid of traditional music or modern music? That would cut off people from the way that they connect to God. And isn't it my job to make sure that we do everything in our power to lead all people to a lifelong faith in Jesus? What a gift we have here at Calvary. I can't wait to worship with you in the sanctuary or the worship space or on the lakeshore together very soon. God bless.